and welcome back to my channel. In this video I'm going to show you how I created my daughter's Elena of Avalor inspired dress. I bought this McCall's 7454 pattern when my daughter was still a toddler, and this rose embossed fabric also at the same time. I used this pattern for the bodice of the dress, and the skirt portion I did make some alterations. For one, when I made this, my daughter was a lot older and I didn't have much fabric. First thing, although, I did make a bow for the back of the dress with a waistband. And I go into more detail on how to make this with my Ariel Kiss the Dress costume, so I will leave a link to that video in the description and the iCard if you want to check that out. But I make a basic bow, and I use the same fabric with her Princess Peach dress. The actual pattern makes this a one-piece dress. However, I decided to split the underskirts from the bodice and the overskirt. So this white lace is actually going to act as more of a petticoat underneath the red skirt. The whole underskirt will be a simple one-piece gathered skirt. This will be the underlayer from between my daughter's skin and the red layer, as well as this lace fabric is going to act as a petticoat as well. And apparently I'm missing footage of when I cut out the red embossed fabric material, but as I said earlier, I start out with the bow and the waistband. For the waistband that's connected to the bow, I cut out a long piece of fabric that's in the same satin pink that I used for the bow, and I made sure that it was wide enough so when I start gathering it, it will have some natural folds to it. And then I will stitch that down lengthwise to make a long tube. Flipping that right sides out and giving it a good press. I do make sure that the seam is actually going to be in the middle on the inside. And then folding in both raw edges, I will stitch this down and then I will go ahead and gather it up. And gathering it up just kind of gives me an idea of where the wrinkles will naturally fall. And as I pull on those gathers to make the waistband tighter, I can actually pin those gathers in place, and then I will iron those down. And then I will stitch one end to the bow itself. The other side will have some sew-on snaps, so that way when it gets on the dress, it will just snap around my daughter's waist and the bow will stay in the back. For the skirt itself, the overskirt that's connected to the bodice, the original pattern was just a basically half circle, but I extended the front part of it so that way I can make those gathers on the front of the dress. This is kind of a rough image of the pattern piece with the extensions, and this is what I'm trying to create. And actually this overskirt took 2 pattern pieces to make the amount of fabric I wanted on the sides. So here I'm just connecting those 2 pieces together, a set for each side, for the right and left side. And the overskirt will be lined. So I use this red chiffon-like material as the lining. and I sew the lining and the fashion fabric together just on the bottom part of the skirt, since I need to flip it insides out and it will be connected to the bodice at the waistband, so I'll close it up then. And then I open up the seams, give it a good press. With that sewn, I go ahead and flip it right sides out. The underskirt is just gathered skirts, so I will take 2 lace fabrics and this red embossed fabric, and it will be sewn up in the back seam. And each skirt is just a big rectangle that I gather down into a waistband. At the same time I'm working on the gathered skirts, I do work on the top of the bodice flounce, and that is just this big old curved piece of fabric that I actually doubled up with the lining of the same rose embossed fabric. And for the flounce, I just connected the 2 pieces on the bottom of the flounce, left the top of the flounce open so I can flip it right sides out. And with turning the flounce right sides out, I go ahead and give it a good press. For the bodice, I just followed the actual pattern instructions. It is a total of 5 pieces, 3 for the front and 2 for the back. And since I do own a serger, I go ahead and serge all my seams. The bodice I did not line. There are sleeves to this dress that sit underneath the flounce, so I take my sleeve pieces and sew up the short straight side of them, making sure to mark on my bodice piece where they need to be stitched at. And once those are sewn and hemmed on the bottom, I go ahead and stitch those to the bodice. Now, since my daughter is a little girl and this is an off-the-shoulder dress, she doesn't have the equipment yet to hold up the dress, so I go ahead and attach some ribbon to the top of the dress, and it's going to be sandwiched in between the flounce and the bodice. And speaking of the flounce, I go ahead and attach that to the bodice itself. You can see that there's some different colors on the flounce. I tried using fabric paint on this material, but this material was so slippery that the fabric paint just slipped off for some reason. So I actually put that painted part on the inside between the bodice and the actual outside of the flounce, so to hide my mistakes. I also do open up the flounce, and I will stitch the seam to the inside of the bodice so that way it stays in place. To attach the outer skirt to the bodice, I go ahead and gather that down, making sure that the middle of the bodice and the middle of the skirts match up. I also gather it in a way in the front, so that way it creates that roughly effect on the front of her dress, like what it shows here. And I'm trying to do that on each side as evenly as possible. And then I go ahead and attach the zipper in the back, and this will only be attached to the outer skirt and the bodice. I do also top stitch that flounce in the back, so that way it doesn't flip up. Now for the underskirts, it is just an elastic waistband gathered skirt. So here's my elastic that I'm using. I did create a waistband with some multiple pieces of cotton red fabric, and the waistband won't be seen anyway, so I wasn't too worried about that. And as I've said before, the 3 underskirts are just gathered skirts. So here I'm just sewing up the back seams of each skirt, and then I will attach it to the waistband. However, I forgot to attach the lace skirts before I attached the waistband, so I had to do that later on. And then I gave the red layer a quick, simple 1/2 inch turned hem. The lace ones I don't have to because they're already finished on the edges. And with a crown, my Elena of Avalor inspired dress is done. With this dress, it would look better with a very large petticoat, but my daughter has outgrown those, so I'm going to have to make her a new hoop skirt for it. But it did come out cute, and I've been promising her this dress for a couple years now, and I figured since she's getting older and can't get this material anymore, I might as well make it. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you next time. Bye.